ஓகே.
இந்த லிங்க் மட்டும் சேட் பாக்ஸ்ல ஷேர் பண்ணுங்க.
ஓகே.
அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். இது வந்து இந்த ரீடிங் ஃபோரம் நடத்திய 5வது நிகழ்ச்சி. பெகி மோகன் அவங்க எழுதின ஃபாதர் டங் அண்ட் மதர்லேண்ட், த பர்த் ஆஃப் லாங்குவேஜ் இன் சவுத் ஏஷியா. இந்த புக்கை வந்து நம்ம கடந்த ஒரு மாசமா படிச்சுட்டு இருக்கோம். இன்னைக்கு 5வது வாரத்துல வந்து நம்ம எல்லாம் ஒன்று கூடியிருக்கோம். இன்னைக்கோட இது வந்து பேச இருக்கிறது வந்து நம்ம ஸ்ரீதேவி. போன வாரம் ஒரு சிறு தடங்களால வந்து நம்மளோட நிகழ்ச்சியை முழுவதுமாக வந்து நடத்த முடியல. அதனால அந்த போன வாரம் பேசினது பேச்சாளர் வந்து நம்ம சுபத்ரா அவங்க அவங்க வந்து ஒரு சிறு ரீகேப் மாதிரி இப்ப கொடுக்க இருக்காங்க. ஒரு 10-15 நிமிஷம் பேசுவாங்க. அதுதான் இதோட நிகழ்ச்சியோட ஆரம்பம். இன்றைய நிகழ்ச்சியோட ஆரம்பம். வாங்க சுபத்ரா, அன்மியூட் பண்ணிக்கோங்க.
Thank you, Bama. So today, this is the recap of chapter 4 from last week. That's a search for language X. So in this chapter, the author Peggy Morgan is convinced that there is a language X, which predominantly was spoken in the Indus Valley civilization areas. And so she actually builds up the scenario leading to the climax of finding what the language X is. So the reason why she claims that there was a language X is because if you take the Ganga and the Yamuna as confluence, as a center point, the languages that are spoken on the eastern side of the confluence and the western side of the confluence have lot of remnants that are very similar and common amongst themselves. So which could actually could have been derived from language X. And that is what she's trying to find out, what the language would have sounded like. And she takes two very prominent examples, Brahui and Burushaski. And then she lists the commonalities between the two, leading to the language X, and also the differences that these languages poses to Sanskrit, which is actually a migrant language. And that she claims because when the Vedic men came into the area, they married the local women, and the local women gave the mother tongue to the children who were raised there, who actually created a new language in that area, which had the grammatical backbone and the substratum from the the language spoken by the mothers, and the vocabulary that is borrowed from the father's own tongue, that is the fatherland. So it's a very interesting chapter. And then she draws a lot of similarities from Brahui and Burushaski to the northern languages, which like Sindhi and Punjabi. And then she's also slowly coming down to the southern languages, which have similarities like Tamil, Telugu, and Malayalam. And she claims very strongly that Tamil has kept itself away from the influence of Sanskrit, while the rest of the South Indian languages, that is Kannada and Malayalam and Telugu, have been very much Sanskritized. And she talks about the grammatical structure. And also she gives 8 features which are very common to these languages that have been discussed. That is the Magadhan languages, the Indus Valley extended periphery languages, and then the southern Dravidian languages, that is Malayalam, Kannada, and Tamil. So the 8 features being the one second.
Retroflex, aspirated sounds.
Yes. Retroflexes, aspiration, the aspirated sounds, then the word order, that is the subject, object, and verb, and then the compound verbs, the light verbs, then the reduplication of words like, ek, telling it a couple of times. So the reduplication of the words. And so she says these are all very much common amongst these languages. And so we have come closer into identifying what that language X, which originally was spoken in the IVC area, could have looked like or could have possibly resembled. So that is where we stopped last week. And now we will move on to this week's discussion with Sridevi, who's going to be reviewing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Suganya. ரொம்ப நன்றி. இன்றைய பேச்சாளர் திறனாய்வாளர் நம்ம ஸ்ரீதேவி சுகன்யா. அவங்கள வந்து அறிமுகப்படுத்துறதுக்கு முன்னாடி வந்து அரசு ஐயா, நீங்க எல்லாரையும் வரவேற்றீங்களா? அன்மியூட் பண்ணிக்கோங்க.
வணக்கம். அனைவரையும் இந்த படிப்பு வட்டத்துக்கு வருக வருக என்று வரவேற்பதில் மகிழ்ச்சி அடைகிறேன். சுபத்ராவுடைய அருமையான அத்தியாயம் 4க்கு பிறகு ஸ்ரீதேவியுடைய அத்தியாயம் 5 படிக்க இருக்கிறோம். இது மாதிரி பல புத்தகங்கள் இந்த குடும்பத்தில் படிக்க இருக்கிறோம். ஒரு வள்ளுவர் குறள் எனக்கு நினைவுக்கு வருகிறது. எய்தற்கு அரியது ஏந்தை கால் அந்நிலையே செய்தற்கரிய செயல். அதாவது ஒரு ஒரு நிலையை, நல்ல நிலையை அடைஞ்சிட்டோம்னா, அரிய நிலையை அடைஞ்சிட்டோம்னா அதுதான் செயற்கரிய செய்யறதுக்கு ஒரு நல்ல வாய்ப்பு அப்படின்னு சொல்றாரு. இந்த மாதிரி பல்வேறு தரப்பட்ட அறிஞர் மட்டம் படிப்பு பின்னணி உள்ளவர்கள் ஒன்றிணைந்து ஆராய்ச்சி ரீதியில் ஒரு ஜேர்னி ஆஃப் சிவிலைசேஷன்ல ஆரம்பிச்சது நம்ம படிக்கணும்னு நம்ம ஒன்று திரண்டு இது ஒரு குழுமமா மாறி சரியா இயங்கிட்டு இருக்கிறது ஒரு செய்தற்கரிய செயல் தான். இது மாதிரி பல இடத்துல நடக்கிறது இல்லை. அதனால இதுவே எய்தற்கு அரியது. இதையே நல்ல புத்தகங்கள் படித்து நம்ம அறிவை பிரிக்கலாம். 1+1+1 = 3 இல்லை, 4, 5, 6, 10, 20 அப்படின்னு சினர்ஜிஸ்டிக்கா பெருகும். அந்த மாதிரி இங்க எல்லாருக்கும் நல்ல பெருகி நம்முடைய விசால பார்வையால் விழுங்கு உலகை அப்படின்னு சொன்ன பாவேந்தருடைய சொற்கள் எனக்கு நினைவுக்கு வருது. அது மாதிரி விரிவடைந்த பார்வையோட, ஆய்வு மனப்பான்மையோட நம்முடைய வரலாறையும் நம்ம அணுகணும்னு கேட்டுக்கிட்டு மகிழ்ச்சியா உங்களை மீண்டும் வரவேற்பதில் மகிழ்ச்சி அடைகிறேன். வணக்கம்.
நன்றிங்க ஐயா. அதாவது இந்த ரீடிங் ஃபோரமோட நோக்கத்தை ரொம்ப தெளிவா மறுபடியும் எங்களுக்கு சொல்றீங்க. இதை வந்து கேட்டு நாங்க எல்லாருமே பயனடைஞ்சிட்டு இருக்கோம். மேற்கொண்டு இதை எடுத்து செல்வோம். இன்றைய பேச்சாளர் ஸ்ரீதேவியை பற்றிய ஒரு சிறு அறிமுகத்தை நான் கொடுக்க இருக்கேன். இவங்களை வந்து எனக்கு ஒரு 2 வருஷமா தெரியும். ஆனாலும் வந்து முறையா தெரியாது. இன்னைக்குதான் முறையான ஒரு எழுத்துப்பூர்வமானதை அவங்ககிட்ட வாங்கினேன். அதை வந்து உங்க எல்லாத்தையும் பகிர்ந்துக்கிறதுக்கு எனக்கு ரொம்ப மகிழ்ச்சி. ஸ்ரீதேவி சுகன்யா ஒரு திறன்மிக்க தொழில்நுட்ப வல்லுநர் மற்றும் அறிவை பகிர்வதில் ஆர்வம் கொண்ட எழுத்தாளர். கணினி அறிவியலில் BE மற்றும் மேலாண்மை துறையில் MBA பட்டம் பெற்ற இவர் முழுநேர மென்பொருள் பொறியாளராக பணியாற்றி அனுபவம் பெற்றவர். தற்போது UiPath, RPA மற்றும் மைக்ரோசாஃப்ட் பவர் ஆட்டோமேட் தளங்களை மையமாக கொண்டு தன்னிச்சை திட்டங்களை மேற்கொண்டு நிறுவனங்களின் செயல்முறை தனியாக்கத்தில் ஆட்டோமேஷனில் மதிப்பூட்டும் தீர்வுகளை வழங்கி வருகிறார். தனது தனிப்பட்ட வலைப்பதிவில் AWS Cloud, UiPath, RPA மற்றும் புதிதாய் உருவாகும் தொழில்நுட்ப கருத்துக்களை குறித்து தமிழில் எளிமையாக விளக்கும் கட்டுரைகளை எழுதுவது இவரது தொடர்ச்சியான முயற்சி. தொழில்நுட்பத்துடன் பாரம்பரியத்தையும் இணைப்பது இவரின் தனிச்சிறப்பு. ஹெரிட்டேஜ் இன்ஸ்பயர்ட் சங்கக்கூடம் வழியாக டாக்டர் வேதாச்சலம் அவர்களின் கோவில் கட்டிடக்கலை, கல்வெட்டு, சின்னவியல், ஐக்கனோகிராஃபி ஆகியவற்றுக்கான அறிமுக பாடங்களில் கடந்த 1.5 வருடங்களாக பங்கேற்று நம் கலாச்சாரத்தையும் மரபையும் புரிந்து கொள்வதிலும் பரப்புவதிலும் ஈடுபட்டு வருகிறார். மேலும் இவர் மட்டும் கற்றுக்கொள்ளாமல் இவர் பிள்ளைகளையும் கட்டாயமாக இதில் ஈடுபடுத்தி அவர்களும் குடும்பமாக இது எல்லாத்தையுமே அவங்க கத்துக்கிட்டு வராங்க. இன்றைய உரையினை வழங்க ஸ்ரீதேவி அவர்களை வரவேற்கிறேன். ஸ்ரீதேவி, வாங்க.
நன்றி பாமா. வணக்கம், அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். இந்த ஒரு அற்புதமான ஒரு புத்தகத்தை கொடுத்து அதை வாசிக்க சொல்லி இந்த குழுமத்துல என்னை அறிமுகப்படுத்திய பாமா அவர்களுக்கும், தொடர்ச்சியாக இதில் என்னை பங்கு கொள்ள ஊக்குவிக்கும் அனைத்து தோழர்களுக்கும் என் நன்றி. நான் ஷேர் பண்ணட்டுமா பிரசன்டேஷன்?
உங்களுக்கு கோஹோஸ்ட் கொடுக்குறேன், ஒரு நிமிஷம். இப்ப பண்ண முடியும் ஸ்ரீதேவி. ஃபுல் ஸ்கிரீன் மட்டும் போட்டுருங்க.
எப்படி?
F5 போடுங்க, இல்லைன்னா கீழே பாட்டம் ரைட்ல அந்த ஸ்லைட் ஷோ சிம்பிள்.
ஓகே.
மேக்புக். ஓகே, தெரியுது ஸ்ரீதேவி, நீங்க ஆரம்பிக்கலாம்.
ஓகே. அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். So we'll start. So can I talk in English?
Yeah, better. We have been doing that.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the first chapter. This is the 5th chapter, Across Sangam. So when I looked into this chapter, why Across Sangam, I immediately related it to the Sangam literature. But after which I found out why this topic. So why she has given it Across Sangam. So when I went and searched for this word Sangam, it is nothing but a confluence of rivers is what, and it has this origin of Sanskrit. So in the first page, she's mentioning that it is otherwise called Sangam or confluence. So again, she's mentioning it's a junction of two rivers. So we'll be leading to which two rivers is she mentioning about. So this is one of the map that is seen in the chapter 2. So where she's calling this Doab and confluence, it's nothing but the Ganga Yamuna confluence. So when she's talking about the first chapter, she was talking about her Creole model. So how is it different from the other languages and the other language features, like why this Creole model has been taken for analyzing the South Asian languages. In the second chapter, she was mainly talking about the Deccan, that is about the darkening. And third chapter was about the ergativity, and fourth was about the language features. And in this 5th chapter, she's mentioning about all these topics together. So it's a very, very vast chapter indeed. So this is the general thing we saw. So Western Indo-Aryan. So in the search of the language X, we were seeing about the Western Indo-Aryan languages. And today, this chapter Across the Sangam is mainly about the Magadhan languages. So this is a confluence she's talking about. And she's saying that this Western Indo-Aryan is ending, its eastern border is this confluence. So this is what we are going. So the what is the real question? So it's about nearly about 60 to 70 pages. And one question she's always talking about is, are the Munda people and the Munda language truly Astro-Asiatic? So here, what do you mean by Astro? So it's nothing but Astro means it's south. So is it why these Munda people and Munda languages are not classified into other group? So the entire chapter runs behind this single question, and she is pointing out, let's see how is she proving that, is it really truly Astro-Asiatic, or is it belonging to a partly Astro-Asiatic or to a different place? So when we say about the Astro-Asiatic languages, so these are the different classifications linguistics have given. And today we are very focused on the Munda and the Khmer language. I think you can see where is the Khmer language and the Munda language. So she starts the chapter with these questions. So the first question she's asking is, we all have, she actually starts with a story of how this confluence is actually addressing to. So she says a monkey is jumping into this confluence, this Sangam, and when it gets up, it becomes a beautiful lady. And is it true? And what is something very true about this story, or what it really denotes is, and she's asking, so why is this story is relevant to this chapters? She's saying that the Vedic people never, the Vedic Brahmins never crossed the confluence. So they always had that this is my eastern limit. So the extended Indus Valley civilization eastern limit is this confluence. Okay, next she's asking, these are some of the questions she asked. So we have all seen like Ashoka as a Magadhan, but his pillars always, it should have only the Magadhan Prakrit, but it is almost leaning towards your Western IVC Prakrit. Why is that? And she's saying there is a very disconnect. Even in the previous chapter, she was saying, why is it there is a disconnect between the Prakrit and the languages after the 10th and the 12th century. Then she's asking whether the Magadhan Prakrit, the Pali and the Attamagadi, are they aliens to the West? So West is what she's meaning to the west of the confluence, that is your extended IBC. And what is special about this Magadhan land? Why are we considering the Magadhan land? And what is the connection between the Magadhan land and the Mundas? And how old the Munda language? And how can it be still alive? And she starts this chapter with an important question: how were the tribes of India classified? Okay. Now, when she's describing about the Magadhan land, she's saying it's a very different land. Why is it different land? Because she, in a book, she's saying like even before the Vedic Brahmins came inside this land, they have followed non-violence. They had six rebirth, six different principles, she's saying. Like they have the rebirth concepts, and they wanted to have a lightest ecological footprints. And we have always seen that the gender agreement and the ergativity always go together. But in Dakini language, we saw that it did not have ergativity, but it had gender agreement based on the Urdu. So Telugu gave its it gave the substratum. So that was a mother tongue, and the father language was your Urdu. So now she's saying this Magadhan language has no gender agreement and no ergativity, but still it is very different. And what makes it different? And she's saying like even within the Magadhans, the language is again internally divided into little people language and the elite language. So that is what she's mentioning in the internal divide within the Magadha. So we have to understand the Magadha is completely different from the extended IBC, and still within the Magadha there is again one more division, which is an internal divide between the Magadhans, and that internal divide is again based on the little people language and the elite language, and it was always against Brahmanism. So now let's come. So this is what she's mentioning in Chris, like this is the eastern edge of the extended IVC periphery. So we again saw the Vedic people, that is the Aryavartas, they were dissuaded from crossing the other side, except for discussions, like short discussions. They have never crossed it in the initial stages, and it is completely a new language zone. And there you can see the inequalities within the society, the elite education and the little people's education. So here we have two different Magadhan languages. The westernmost is called the Bhojpuri Magadhi and the Maithili, and the eastern Magadhan is your Assami, Odia and Bengali. So at the back she says like how these are classified, how these western and the eastern. The westernmost had a it was leaning more towards the IVC languages, whereas the eastern Magadhan was different. So then when she's talking about how come Mundas are coming in here, so she says these Magadhan languages can be traced back to the Munda. So here she's saying about why she's talking about the Munda people is because the little people she is mentioning here are the Munda people. So that is why we are talking about the Munda. So we immediately, when we are starting the chapter, we'll have why she's suddenly talking about the Magadhan languages, then coming to the Munda people, because the Bhojpuri was a language which is taught, which is being taught by the little people. So when she's tracing back, she's tracing them to the Munda people. So where exactly are these Munda people? They are in the Jharkhand region of the India. And what is very special about these Munda people is that genetically the M haplogroup, it is commonly shared with the Southeast Asians. So we can see the sharing of the genetic tag of these Munda people with shared DNA with almost all modern South Asians. And the other special thing about is with them are they are this genetic mutations of the maternal DNA of the Australian Aborigines and the Indian tribes. These Munda people, they are very exclusive. And this is a paper produced by Satish Kumar of Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, Hyderabad. She has given the datings of it in the book. So here she's saying that she's comparing this Munda people with the Australian Aborigines. And the Australian Aborigines, from the genetic mutation, they also have the retroflexes as we have in the Munda languages. And here she asks a main question. The Beiga and the Birgor tribes, though they have the genetics as well as they share the genetics with the ancestral group, they have been classified differently. While the Beiga is classified as a Dravidian tribe, the Birgor are classified as the Austroasiatic. So as we said, the entire chapter is running behind one single question. Are these Mundas really Austroasiatic as have been defined? So she's moving this chapter towards that. So this is what we saw. These little people or the Munda people they were mainly the hunters and gatherers. So these people were found in Jharkhand, the present day eastern side. And the language of Munda is again divided basically into many languages. So here we have the Santali is the largest group, then followed by the Murgar, and these are the other tribal groups we have mentioned. She has mentioned in the book. So this is a map of the Munda family. So this is North Munda and the South Munda family. So these are this is the Santali. Then you have the whole language, Mundari languages. And there are other types of languages here. So this is exactly what she has given in the book. So the North Munda and the South Munda. So then we saw about there are Magadhan languages. So these are the three westernmost Magadhan languages. And when we are reading this chapter, how can we read this chapter? So she has given the intro. She has asked so many questions in this chapter. The main question, as I see, is this language, Munda language, Austroasiatic? But then she had so many questions. But how can we read this chapter for the readers to proceed? How can you read it? So I think we can read it like first she says a story of migration. Then she talks about the genetic evidences. Then as usual, she's taking the language, the vocabulary, the numerical classifiers, and the subject and the object markings. Then she talks mainly about the history of this land, why this land is very special. So before I get into the other slides, I'll just brief about this slide. So this migration we saw in Manimanan sir's the Ergatu dragons chapter, how the first Indians were out of the Africa. So the first question she asked is, so the first Indians were out of Africa. So were there no other people living in the other regions? So first question is that she places. So first she says there would have existed already some of the people, and she calls them Munda people. So maybe we can keep them as a Munda people. So when the first Indians are out of Africa, so how she calls them successful. Why she is calling them successful is because they were able to live, that they were able to create a progeny, because they did not, their genes did not die out, or they did not end out. So that is why she calls them successful. So these are the first out of Africa. Then we have this migration of farmers from the Zagros mountains, and she says that these Munda people, they would have been spread all over the region from the IVC till the even till the Malaysian peninsula, because during the Ice Age they would have spread, and those who have settled, those people, the Munda people who would have settled in the Zagros mountain, they would have been in contact with the farmers from the Zagros mountains, and they would have constituted the Dravidians, she calls them. In one of the lines, she's mentioning about that. Then she comes after, she says these Munda people would have been joining with the farmers in the Zagros, and they would have constituted the Dravidians, while the other Mundas, they would have been left alone. So these Mundas were staying in the Gangetic plains, or in the beyond the confluence, and those would have, then the migration of the Southeast Asia would have happened because of the Japiano rise she's mentioning at the later stages. Then before 1000 to 6000 years ago, she's mentioning about one more migration to the same migration that would have happened in the Munda region, that is through the Sultanates and the Mughal migrations. Then she's specially talking about the genetics, how the M haplogroup of the mitochondrial DNA and this migration from Southeast Asia, they have constituted around about 60% in the Y DNA of the Munda people. And here she's saying why the earlier linguistics would have classified Munda people as Austroasiatic is because of the tools. So she takes one archaeological evidence, and then she proves like how it might be wrong. Actually, they wouldn't have, already the Munda people would have stayed everywhere. So she's mentioning here about the Orange Asli, the Malayan peninsular tribal people. So she says they would have spread out till the Malayan peninsula. Then in the language, she's talking about the vocabulary. So here it's very interesting how she's mentioning about the Grierson's LSI volume 4. So there she says how he has taken each vocabulary, and he has compared it with the vocabulary of the South Asian languages. And then what is special about this particular language is the numeral classifiers, and these classifiers are also from the South Asian. Then these languages have the subject and the object marking as a South Asian. So if all these are there, then how come she's suspecting that this language is not a South Asian, Austroasiatic? So that is what the whole chapter. So she has a proof, like Grierson is proving that you have the vocabulary of the Southeast Asians, you have the vocabulary of the that the numeral classifiers are from the Southeast Asians languages, as well as the subject and the object marking. So having all these attributes, and how she's proving it to be a not to be a Austroasiatic language. Then she's talking about the history of the land. So we know, like before 4000 years, before the Vedic people entered, we already saw they would have stopped in the confluence. Before the IVC periphery, they would have stopped. So this is the IVC periphery we saw. Sorry. So she argues that these Vedic people would, there would have been a non-Vedic people also, and they are called the Vratyas. So these non-Vedic people would know the Sanskrit language, but they were not Vedic. So we should understand that she's saying like there were two people. One were the Vedic people and the Vratyas. The Vratyas were bold enough to cross the confluence area, and they were bold enough to reach the present day Magadhan land. And from the Vratyas, they had all these ideas, and they were called the mystic people. So these mystic people are the ones who were very different. They believed in non-violence. They believed in living as ascetics. They believed in negative karma, and they always wanted to have a less ecological footprint. And that is why this Magadhan land, because of the Vratyas, this Magadhan land was able to adopt the principles of Buddhism, Jainism, and Ajivikas. So when these all comes, the Pala dynasty, it declined, and then entered the Muslim rulers. So she gives a very long story as how people, the last Buddhism were not followed by the elite people, but they were followed by the tribal people of Magadhan land, and they were following it as Durga. Sorry, it's not Durga. They were following with a special. She gives a special name for that. I'll just. She gives a special name for them maintaining. It's not called Buddhism, but they are maintaining it with the special tribal religious facts. Then the Pala dynasty declines, and these Buddhist people, the tribal Buddhists, are converted into Muslim rulers. They are converted into Muslims. They are willingly converting themselves into Muslims. Why? So the question, why are they converting themselves into Muslims? And why? What happened? What was the need for those tribal people to accept the Muslim rulers? So this is a overall view of the entire chapter. So now we'll get into the first thing called migration. So this we already know. So this was a Homo sapien migration. So we say it like 65,000 years before they are migrating from the Asia, from the Africa in the Ice Age. Sorry. So she's saying the Mundas would have already, the people would have been there till the Malayan Peninsula. So that is how she's proving all the archaeological tools that were found in the Legong Valley were not like people from here migrated to the Munda region, but already these Mundas would have been spread all over this region. So these tools were found before the migration. So they were all the same people, and they call the Orange Asli. So the people here in the Malayan Peninsula are called the Orange Aslis. So this is a first out of Africa, we say. So here she's saying because of the Ice Age, there would have been only 10 kilometers gap between this. So they would have traveled all the way here, and they would have moved. So the Munda people, some would have stayed before in the near the IVC region, and others would have spread out all over. So these Munda people would have spread out. This is proved, genetically proved, because of the M haplogroup DNA that is found. So that is how they are tracing back that it would have, the Mundas would have spread out all over. And this, as we know, is a second migration. That she says like people already in the northern Munda IVC region, they would have been mixing with the second migration people to produce the Dravidians, whereas the Munda people in the eastern side, the other side of the confluence would have been left alone, and so they were able to maintain the language. And before this migration is where your Southeast Asian migration comes in, where the people from the Southeast Asia, 4,000 years, they would have migrated back to the Munda people with their own rice. So how did they find out? How were it? Was it a story? No, she says it is not the story. It was purely genetic. So the genetics is dating back to the Japiano rice she's mentioning, where the hybrid rice variety was found to be mixing with the rice variety that was found in the Munda region. The Munda people were already having the rice which were 3,000 years old. So with this hybrid variety, they were able to trace back the third migration of the Southeast Asian people, which was 4,000 years ago. And then comes the Sultanate. So now we are going back to the language. So what is special? Because why I am taking this language is that there is something more special about this language here. So these Munda languages, so how do Tamil have? So Tamil, we have the Uyarthine and the Agrine. So but here they divide the nouns into animate and the non-animate nouns. So I was very confused. What is animate and non-animate? Animate is humans, animals, and heavenly bodies. They are called animate. And the non-animate is the other things. So it is not based on the living things. So this is how they are classifying it. And here again, you have two different features. The North Mundas, here the ergativity is not there, but the objects are marked. Whereas when it comes to South Munda, it fades. And then you have as we discussed before, we'll see what is numerical classifiers. And because the entire chapter runs around this numerical classifiers. And again, she discusses about the base 20 counting system. So when we have, in Tamil, we have a 10, 20, 30 system. But when it goes to the Munda language, she's mentioning like they take as a base 20 system. So what is this base 20 system is, we have in Bhojpuri. So all those of who knows, 10, 20, 30, 40. So these are Hindi. But when it comes to base 20, they say 10, 20, or it's otherwise called Kori. Then she says Korya Das. That is, they make 20 and 2. Then 20, 20. So this is, again, I searched in the net. Is it again followed in Bhojpuri? No. This is a Bhojpuri which is found in the Trinidadian region. So she mentions that there they were still using this Kori. Instead of B's, it is still used as Kori. And they make it as 20 minus 2. So then 20 minus 3. So even in Tamil, if you say 9, அதுக்கப்புறம் வந்து 99 அப்படிங்கிறது எப்படி வருது அப்படின்னா, அந்த 100ல இருந்து நம்ம எடுக்கிறோம். இப்ப 990, அப்ப 99 அப்படின்னு, அப்ப 100 minus 1. அதே மாதிரி இவங்க they are taking it as 20 minus 2. Then if 60 is expressed as in multiples of 20, so that is what is called as base 20. So Bhojpuri uses this base 20. And then the special thing about this is we have the three-way number contrast. What is this three-way? In Sanskrit, you have this singular, plural, dual, and plural. But in Tamil, you have only singular and plural. But in Sanskrit, you have ek, dvi, and plural. So the same system is followed here. So again, now you can see there is an Indo-Aryan mix in this Magadhan language. Okay. Then what is the special thing? So already we saw the entire South Asian region is retroflex. Not only here, we saw all the South Asian languages. So people who speak the South Asian languages with retroflex also share a mitochondrial DNA of M haplogroup. So it is also proved that they all share those languages where retroflex is there. They share the mitochondrial M haplogroup. And we already saw these are the ergative areas. So, but we already saw that Magadhan languages doesn't have ergativity, but few we can, at later chapters, she says ergativity is declining because of the subject and the object markers. Let's see that. And now, okay, now let's see what were the theories and the debates. So he's a main person, Grierson's Linguistic Survey of India. So his volume 4 talks mainly about the Munda languages, Dravidian and the Munda languages. So here he makes a main 3 points. The first one he says is that it shares the vocabulary is sharing with the Southeast Asians. And the second thing is he's saying like these follow these follow a vocabulary which is numeral, follow a mixed of Austroasiatic. But he never mentions about the numerical classifiers in his book, in his volume 4. Then he mainly says that the languages are originating based on the races, the classification of the races. So which Max Muller is completely against, and he is saying no, it cannot be against the one. So Max Muller is saying no, he is taking the difference in the vocabulary, grammar, and the number system. And what is the modern linguistics? So she mentions about 6 to 7 papers of modern linguistic research, and it mainly focuses on the numerical classifiers. Then she again mentions how her Creole model, which she explains in the first chapter, second, third, how it fits into this Magadhan language also. Okay. Now, when we go for the LSI model, so he says real languages happens only after mixing races. So he says that Munda and Dravidian languages are not connected. Okay. So these are, again, we are seeing like they have the basic verbs and nouns from the Southeast Asians, and even the analytic type are from the Austroasiatic. Okay. Now, to prove, it's a big chapter where she's proving, but one paper from the recent research, it says this language is, sorry, it's the Mon-Khmer language is completely different. It's exactly opposite to the Munda languages. So this has been proved, and you can see like how the even the phrase accent, like the falling and the, so when you search in the net, you can see the initial word pronunciation of the language, the difference between these two languages. So I just checked for the falling and the rising, it was very different. So it is being said it is exactly opposite. Though the previous linguists say it is completely, though they share the common vocabulary, but the structure is completely different. Okay. Now we'll go to the numerical classifiers. So before we need to know what are these markers. So the markers are nothing but we can classify them as case marker, tense marker, and the plural marker. So this I just took it from for case marker, like I alku in adukan. So these are added to the nan avanai parthen. So it is always added to the object. So tense is how nan parthen, parkiren. So it is always added to your verb. And your plural is we add kal. So these are the markers. So she makes case marker, tense marker, and the plural marker. These are the markers generally we see. Now, what is this? So we have a plural marker. We have only kal. But what is different in this Munda languages? See, they have here do bai te. 2 brothers were there. There is no marker at all. இரண்டு சகோதரர்கள் இருந்தார்கள். So இரண்டு சகோதரர்கள். So plural marker இருக்கு. அதுக்கப்புறம் இங்க வந்து எந்த கேஸ் மார்க்கரும் இல்ல. But when you go to Bhojpuri, can you say, do go by Ragasan? So this go is what she's calling as a classifier. So this go will change based on the noun. So your humans will have a different classifier. Your objects will have a different classifier. So even in Bhojpuri, you have Jo, Jan. For people, they use Jo or Jan. So these are the markers that are specially found only in the Munda languages. So Santali also have such type of numerical classifiers. So this is one thing, and she explains a lot about this classifiers and how it was missed in Grierson's volume 4 of LSI, though it was present, how it was missed. And she says what should be a technique for people to understand a language. So here she mentions Grierson would give a piece of a text to the person, and he would ask that person to just translate. So when a person is translating, she's saying that person is already an elite person. So the elite person will not use a word or a classifier that is used by the little people, because he wants to make that language to be elite. So that is how Grierson was missed the numerical classifiers in his document, though it was present. So now this is how she talks about the numerical classifiers. And then the one more very important thing is your subject object marking. Okay, I'll just see this. So I saw 3 big cows. So this is an English sentence. So here we already saw this is I is your in, it's a pronoun, and per ya. So here ya is your numerical classifier. Then comes your big object. Now the verb here is again taking so many. Can you see there are so many words added to it? Ne is a verb, root verb, but the ne has 2 or 3 they call it as and there are so many markings behind this. So let's see what are they. So this is a subject noun. So it doesn't have any markings, but this is what she calls it as clitic. So there is an in. So can you see? There is a in here. Can you see the in here? So this in is getting attached to the verb. So this is called the subject marker. So this object and the subject markers are always taken to the verb. And now we are marking the object. So here we can see the guy is a noun, and this co is again your object marker. See, can you see? This is your subject marker that will be based on this subject, and this co is again based on this object. So what is the final thing? So she's saying all these, she's explaining all these, and what is she finally explaining in what is she trying to explain here is that she is saying that these Magadhan languages, they have a deep structural and vocabulary links to the Munda substratum. So it is the underlying, I forgot to include one thing for Munda. On the top of that, so this will be your mother tongue. So on the top of this, you have a layer of your Southeast Asian languages, from which the classifiers, you had the classifiers, you had some of the vocabularies, not the entire vocabulary. We already saw the father language will always give you the vocabulary, but the grammatical substratum will be always your mother tongue. So finally she moves on to the language that Magadhan is following your Creole model. So Magadhan languages are following the Creole model. So she's concluding that it's again following the Creole model. I think there is a lot to discuss, but too much of grammar, and it's actually very interesting when you look into those numerical classifiers. I just got, I don't know which one to take and which one to leave, but it's a really very fantastic subject. I think we need to read more, dive deep into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sridevi. Tarasamaya. எனக்கு ஒரு கேள்வி இருக்கு. கேட்கலாமா?
We can go to question now, discussion.
So what are the present Munda, like what are the present Munda languages that is being spoken currently, like
Yeah.
the tribes?
That is your Santali. So we had a list of languages. We showed, it is shown in the map, right? So you had the list of languages, North Munda languages and the South Munda languages. Then you have the Magadhan languages. From that, the Munda took all the Southeast Asian features as well. And it has evolved into the Magadhan language of Bhojpuri. She gives a list of Bhojpuri, then Western and Eastern, maybe in the slide I can show.
Even in her forward, in the very first page, she says Santali, Bengali is constructed upon Santali, right? Like
Yes.
the forward
Yeah, she does.
Yes,
does.
yes, yes.
Right. And like, again, like I see a confusion here, like you talked about the migration, and the first Indians, she claims that the first Indians were speaking Munda, and they had got touch with the Iranian farmers and then become Dravidian. But I don't remember seeing a proof for it, saying like, I see that contradiction. Maybe I'm not framing my question
You're
correctly.
not alone, Bama. So even I was confused a lot when I only glanced at it. I'm not going to say that I thoroughly read it, but when I went through the chapter, like she was going back and forth here and there and
Yeah,
jumping.
actually,
and
Sridevi did a very good job. Actually, it's a
absolutely,
very
yeah.
dense
Kudos
chapter.
to you, Sridevi, because I don't know how you were able to digest the whole jumping around. But my question, maybe this is for you, Rajaya. So, recently there was an article about the M130 being found in South India with Virmandi. So, according to this chapter, there should have been more M130s in the Munda tribes, but
No,
why they
her
didn't
argument,
find it?
the key difference, I think, key important point, I think, that pointed out with Peggy takes this view, and I think Sri emphasizes, she ignores the male. That's why it is
Okay.
mother tongue. So with the M she talks about is have mitochondrial DNA, M, and therefore, but you find actually in the M1 is the earliest. So far, M1 has not been discovered in India. M2 is the second oldest. That has been there. You see a lot of M2 in South India. You don't see M2 as much in North India. You do see them, but not as much. But you find them greater presence in the tribal population and lower caste people than you do in the higher caste people. Higher caste people tend to belong to R and U rather than M. But anyway, that's another deciphering that needs to be done. But I think there's a very important insight that was carried out, which Sridevi brought it up. But there's I found a lot of similarities between the Munda language and the Dravidian language, which is the subject, object, verb, and also its agglutinative and postposition. These are important characteristics, together with some retroflex phonemes. And I think retroflex phoneme has been deeply studied. So the three important characteristics are there. On the other hand, ergavity is completely absent in Dravidian languages. It's present in Munda language to some extent, not fully. On the other hand, Peggy Morgan argued when she discussed language X in chapter 4 that ergavity was part of the properties of the language X because adjoining languages have that grammatic characteristic, right? So this is sort of in between. There is some similarity between Munda language. I may make another important observation during my travel. Bihar, which is sort of east of Sangam, you find the three major language groups spoken there, which is the Indo-Aryan and of course Dravidian, as well as the Eastern language to which Munda belongs, the Northern Munda language. All three language groups exist in Bihar, and Hindi is
Which
not the major
Dravidian,
language.
which Dravidian did you see there?
Kuruk is one that I remember. There's another one. They're spoken by the tribal
Okay.
people.
Okay.
The details are in many places, but I can dig them up. And of course, that belongs to Northern Dravidian language group. Do you know what the difference between Northern Dravidian language group and Southern Dravidian language group? Because
Not really. I know
really,
Krishnamurti has written a lot about that, right?
yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of, but they're not major differences. There are finer differences. The way that I have understood it. That's a topic we should get into at some point in time. Brahuji belongs to its own territory, which is known as non-peninsular Dravidian language group, right? That's how Professor Southworth calls about it. So we have non-peninsular Dravidian language, Northern Dravidian language, Central Dravidian language, and Southern Dravidian language, right? They've classified them on a linguistic basis. Now, Munda, there is some similarity between Northern Dravidian language and Munda languages to my cursory view. But I think this is a question for Sridevi she tried to answer this, she spoke a lot about Munda language, distinguish between Northern Dravidian language and Munda language. I don't know whether that was gotten into this particular chapter, but this is a topic I think Krishnamurti gets into in his book. He does get into this. Any thoughts that you may have, Sridevi?
So
Unmute yourself. Yeah.
So can you just Northern Munda language?
Northern
No.
Dravidian and Munda.
Because they're spoken in the same region, right? But anyway, that is not an easy question to answer because I don't have even thoughts towards it. If you ask me what is the difference between Northern Dravidian language and Central Dravidian language to which Telugu belongs, I won't be able to articulate it carefully. Telugu has got many other features that Tamil does not have, right? Many of us know this. Not only it has absorbed many, for example, the one that I remember reading is inclusive V and exclusive V. They distinguish not only on the noun nangal, but they also distinguish on the basis of verb as well. And if you now go all the way to Andaman, they have 4 different groups within the exclusive inclusive V. Tamil we have 2, English has 1, Sanskrit has 1, and Telugu has 3, and the Andamanese language was 4 separate categories. If you ask me what they exactly are, I'll be able to look back into my notes and tell you. But so it's a more complex grammar that is present in that language. Soluma.
One thing I have just noted is she's mentioning in this chapter that the Western languages have gender and ergativity, but the Eastern have the grammatical gender and they don't have ergativity. So that is what she's mentioning in this chapter. So that is how she is distinguishing that West and the Eastern languages, that is the Magadhan land, but that is leaning towards the West and that is leaning towards the East. This is the main difference she's mentioning about. And the other thing is, as it goes from towards the East, the number of numerical classifier is also increasing. It's very interesting in this chapter. I did not add those, it's very interesting. Like when it goes to Assam, it is having around more than 9 classifiers.
20 classifiers. she said.
20. Oh, okay. That is, she's taking Jo, Jan in Bhojpuri, and when it goes towards the east, she's mentioning it is having more
Bengali has
classifiers.
6 and Assamese has 20.
Then the way we use the numbers is an interesting one. He said 20, right? To me, the first concept is you have 10 fingers and 10 toes, so 20. But in Indus
9
Valley,
to-
according to a German scholar, 16 was the cardinal number. And I think if you think about it, it is a 4 on each finger that you can count. And therefore, Padinarum Petrum Peruvargu, this comes from that 16 is my theory, by the way. அதுக்கு இதுக்கும் சம்பந்தம் இருக்குமான்னு என்னன்னு தெரியல but 16 is some kind of a holy number in the Tamil culture இல்லையா?
I have a question for Sridevi. If I understand you correctly, Peggy Mohan seems to think that the first Indians probably spoke something like a Munda language, or you should be able to find Munda traces or substratums among all of the first Indians. And that means that we should be able to find Munda substratum in Dravidian, and especially among the Vedas of Sri Lanka and the Andamanese. Does she talk
Plus
about that at all, or
Abajanis.
is there any connection between the Andamanese and Munda?
No, she
Yeah.
doesn't mention any of that.
Yeah, she's
Yeah, correct
mentioning
me if
about
I'm wrong, Sridevi.
she's mentioning about the Andamanese language, and she's linking it to the, but she's not saying that all are speaking Munda. She's saying that they have the genetic, they share the genetic,
Yeah.
but the language is always X. She's not saying it would be the Munda language. There would have been a full language that would have been spoken by all these people.
Mhm.
And still there is she's not mentioning that Munda is a substratum language, so that she's very clear.
Okay.
She's saying there might be a language that is base, but it would have evolved, and most of the first Indians would have got these substratums, she's saying. That is what
Yeah,
she's
there's a lot of speculation, but the one point that she really tries to prove in the chapter is about the disconnect that she wants to establish between the Austroasiatic. That's the whole point of the chapter. That's how I viewed it. Yeah.
Yeah, that is, I got that from Sridevi's talking, particularly the summary. She seems to be driving towards the idea that the Magadhan languages are also Creoles, but this time influenced by the southeastern influence on a Munda base, which is a very clever way of arguing that, hey, Creole is not just for the West Indies, it's very global. And
No,
especially
actually
in
I
India.
left one layer in between. Actually, it is the Munda substratum. Upon that you have the Prakrit, and upon that Prakrit only is coming your Southeast Asian. So she's saying like before the Southeast Asians came, the Mundas, the Prakrits have influenced them.
Right.
Because that is where she's talking about the Vratyas. So the Vratyas are the people who came with Sanskrit, but they are not Vedic. They were able to mingle with the local people. So that is how the Prakrits would have come. And upon the Prakrits came the later 4000 only, she's saying the Southeast Asians came. So their languages came with the numerical classifiers and all those object markings all came. So that is how
What is
she's
the
proving.
base for the, like this is a question to anyone here, and maybe Rajaya, you can answer that. What is the base or the root for the Southeast Asian tribe or group? Where are they coming from? Like all of a sudden they are migrating back into India, but where did
Austroasiatic
they already?
language group.
Yeah, I mean the language group or the people who came from the Cambodia region or that Southeast Asia region back into India. How did they get there first?
So
that's always something that I wondered.
Can I answer? So here
Sure,
she's yeah, sorry sir.
no.
Here she's mentioning why they migrated back. For that she's giving a reason. That's because of the Japian, the rice variety. The rice, she's saying like because of the rice, the people, it grew too much of rice grew, and people also were the people also grew in population, and they wanted, when a particular area is populated, they move towards, right? So that is what she's mentioning, like they are moving back again here. So they are actually migrating back.
But
Oh,
if they
so when
migrate
they come
back,
from India to
why the language has changed when they come back?
well,
That is the different time
If I
frames.
may,
It's not the
if I may
same.
interject here, if I may
Yeah.
interject, the popular understanding among the scholars is rice was first cultivated in Yangtze, and that had a huge agricultural surplus, and the people from that region migrated because of farm production, and they then brought rice cultivation to the Gangetic Valley. And because this has been genetically proven using the genetics of rice, by the way, the rice that is grown in India now is really origin is from Yangtze. It's a crossbreed between the Indian one and the one that came from China, if you will. And although we don't have solid human migration DNA evidence, but we have plant-based genetic evidence of the rice that is being cultivated now. Now, there have been some rice hulls that has been harvested. Current science reported about maybe 15 years ago, 10 years ago, that rice cultivation took place in Gangetic Valley. And scholars have rejected that, saying that is wild rice, not the cultivated rice. Now, what is the difference? The wild rice per acre will give you X amount of pounds of rice, but the cultivated rice will give you 50 times more. So which one would you want to cultivate? The one that has high yield or low yield? So rice is a natural, by the way, all of you would know, on every shore of the lake, you will find tall grass, and it's a monocot. Biologically, that is the simplest plant species, a very most primitive one. It always will prove seeds to propagate itself, and that is one kind of a rice. You can harvest it and presumably can eat it. The wild rice has got high fiber, many of you would know. It has a lower carbohydrate content, and that is, by the way, the so-called red rice. The Kerala people, it's often known here as a Kerala rice, the red rice, which has a coating of certain vitamins and all of that. So rice is a natural product of wherever there's a stagnant water or a river flow on the shores, it'll grow. Somebody long time ago harvested that and found they could eat, and then they try to figure out how to cultivate it, domesticate it, and that goes back to 8000 BC, somewhere in Yangtze Valley. So that particular species, and in fact, I posted on my Facebook page of how it came in. What we don't know is how exactly it came in, but knowing the genetics of current cultivation and all ancient ones that has been deciphered, we know it came from Southeast. Now, the expansion, this is now a theory. How they came, did they come overland through Assam, Bengal, and then into Bihar region, or they took a boat? The evidence, subsequent evidence is they came by a boat. The reason is Kalinga was populated with a fair number of these people, and even now in Bhubaneswar, you were there, right, recently, they have a festival known as taking the boat going away. And they were the first earliest people who went to Indonesia, and the Hinduism was spread perhaps through them. The reason is even now in Indonesia, Kling is a derogatory term for people of Indian descent. And so Kling is as abbreviation for Kalinga is my hypothesis. So there were boat people. They have special festivals where they would go away on a boat. And we also know people from that region also went to Sri Lanka because they were also people from Kalinga, not during early period, we do not know, but we know that it took place in 9th, 10th, 11th century time period. So there is a connection with Odisha, current day Odisha, and also further north. And the southern Munda language group is in Odisha region, if I remember right, that borders with Bihar.
I have another question. Is there any other discussion related to rice? Okay. So, Sridevi, what is the retroflex? Is there a retroflex in Munda language? Rashid talks about it.
Retroflex is common. That's what she's saying in the previous chapter also. It is common in most of the South Asian languages. Retroflex is something I even showed a slide, one of the slide where the whole of India, except a few parts, is fully retroflex. But in the previous chapter, we saw that sounds differ. The retroflex sounds differ. She's classifying based on that. But retroflex is even found in most of the South Asian countries other than India. So there is a map also where it shows like it is even found in Australian Aborigines. So
My
she
question
says in the
comes
previous
comes
chapter,
from there because Australian Aborigines also has a retroflex, and their retroflex is very similar to what Tamil has, right? Tadan and la, right? So I think all 6 of them match. So in this Munda tribe, Munda languages also, you have all of them like.
yeah,
Is it the same retroflex or a different retroflex?
I think that is in the search of language X. She's mentioning some of the languages: Punjabi, Sindhi, Balochi. Then in this chapter, actually, she's saying like there is one piece of a line where she's saying your Balochi, then your Dravidian languages and the Munda languages should have a common origin. She's mentioning all these 3 languages should have a common. That is what she's
She
mentioning.
doesn't get to answer your question directly, Bama. She doesn't get into the details of which exact retroflex is there in Munda. There is no direct answer to that, as far as I know.
But she has mapped the retroflex phonemes in India.
Yeah.
And there's a more detailed map she's given a talk on, where you find more retroflex in the northwest region than in the east, and more in the south. But there's another remark that came up. The very northern part of northwest has more retroflex phonemes than what you find in Tamil. And the retroflex are divided. This is a little bit of research I did. I dug up information. They're classified by 5 different kinds of retroflex depending upon your tongue position. I'm glad to share with you this particular thesis that came out about something like about 10, 15 years ago, which goes into a great deal of detail on retroflex phonemes in various different languages. It's a very comprehensive study. We should perhaps take that up as an interesting study because it's a very unique identifier for Indian languages, by the way. It's present in other languages too, but not to the extent that is present in India. The classification.
But the la is only present in Tamil, you said, out of all of this?
Ra.
Yeah, Tamil and Malayalam, yeah.
Now, by the way, there is a term known as IPA, which is International Phonetic Alphabet. It's something to be worthwhile understanding because they represent sound by a letter. And apparently a version of Ra is present in the very northern part of Pakistan. And the thought is, the scholars believe it was induced in rather than native to that area. But trying to figure that out from 2000 years ago will be a pretty difficult task. But a good friend pointed out that the very early strata of Rig Veda has these phonemes, certain phonemes, which are retroflex. Later versions did not have. Now, I don't know what that means. So retroflex phoneme, the presence of it is really a very complex subject. It's still not fully unraveled. She has addressed to some extent here, but a more detailed study has been done by a person in Europe, if I remember right. The reason is certain Uralic languages, which is the very northern part of Europe, you know what that means, right? They have retroflex phonemes. If you follow Professor Reich's work, the Bronze Age people from steppes went west. They dominated. In fact, residues of early hunter-gatherers of Europe are absent, literally, but they dominated the culture. But they didn't go up north because it's perhaps cold. And the residues of their ancient hunter-gatherer genes are still present in northern part of Europe, meaning northern Norway, Sweden, that type of an area. They have retroflex phonemes, some primitive versions. Is it because it was there before and the incoming steppe people did not carry them forward? That's, of course, an open question. So it is present in some parts of Europe, but not in a very large portion. It's present in Australia, but not raw, but na and la and are present. And also ta is present, I think. 3 or 4 of those phonemes are present.
It's present in Africa also to some extent. Is it?
Yeah, East Africa.
Parma, to your first question you were asking, right? What were the other languages? I think in page 207, she has given a list of all those languages. Bhojpuri, Maithili, Bengali, Odia, Assami, for which Santali will be your base. That is what she's giving in. Maybe you can refer to it.
Yes, Santali seems to be the oldest one that could go close to the base of Munda, I think, according to her, right, Sridevi? Yeah.
This chapter is more elaborate. One reason I could think of is because it is also her PhD thesis. Somewhere she has also mentioned about it. It's also Peggy's PhD thesis. So it's quite elaborate. So again, talking about the DNAs, right? The ancient DNA studies. She is referring some 3-4 papers by Chauby, the Birbal Institute, and she is highlighting the contrast between the conclusions made by the genetist versus the linguist. So maybe always the genetist says that the migration is from the Vietnam, that area, Southeast Asia, towards India through the Burma, Bengal areas, right? But then the linguistics trajectory, what she's trying to map is not so. It is like it is spread. It was unanimously spread everywhere, and that is what it is. So, Sridevi, you want to add those conversations also because they are quite important, I feel, because
Interestingly, although she, in the front of the book she says Bengali is built on Santali foundation, and of course Professor Southwood would say Marathi is built on a Dravidian foundation. Very similar, analogous argument. But if you look at the Bengali genome, you find very little of haplogroup O. On the other hand, if you go into Assam, there are tribal groups which are essentially 80% haplogroup O, which are primarily people of Chinese origin. On the other hand, if you analyze the genome of Bengali people, you find genes that have come from Far East, like Cambodia, etc. So if you will, the men folks who came there did not survive, but they did bring and inject in their genes into the people who lived in that region. So on the other hand, you find O haplogroup in large concentration, certain tribal people in southern Bihar and northern Odisha. But, we don't see, however, the mitochondrial group that's associated with them. So that's something to be looked into. I'll go through the Anthropological Society of India, that 450-page volume, and see whether I can extract any information out of mitochondrial DNA. That information, by the way, came out only about 2 years ago. That's before she wrote this book. So there might be some useful information in that book, in that compilation.
yeah, I just want to add one thing. What she quotes it from Chauby's paper is, even now, the O haplogroup is about 60%. So she takes it as a confirmation to say that the migration has been there and it is still existing, and it is a male-dominated migration.
Yeah, her underlying theme right through is only males migrated, right?
Maybe
But
we
there are
also
evidences.
have yeah, Subhadra.
I don't know if
No.
I want to 100% agree with that. I've
Yeah.
always been skeptical about that, but yeah, the whole book is based on that one baseline. So I don't know how to.
In fact, when I made this point to one of my classmates, he said, for them to travel from steppe area all the way into Hindu Kush region, they would have to have women with them. They couldn't have come all the way without
Yeah.
any women. But anyway, there are some, right? This is not an easy thing to analyze because we don't have enough ancient genomic data from India, unfortunately. Because if we can extract that DNA, then we'll be able to answer many of these questions very clearly. We don't have that. And India never invested any energy into this field. And in fact, it's very recent. And unfortunately, we don't have that level of effort that is going on in India. Although the unit at Madurai Kamaraj University was established many years ago, 3, 4, 5 years ago, I think their progress has been very modest.
Sridharan has a point. Sridharan
Yeah.
has an addition. Yes, please.
So I was reading a book called Volgas to Ganga. Volga se Ganga to Ganga, I think. Volga to Ganga. Okay, the author is Sankrathiyan. I think they call him as
Yeah,
Sangathiyan.
Rahul Sangrutia, and there's a Tamil translation sitting right here, right behind me.
Yeah.
Volga
I read
Virindu
that
Gangai
book.
Valley.
So I read that book. There are about 19 short stories, historical fictional stories. And it goes all the way up to 266 generations, around 8,000 years. And each layer, and each is a kind of story about that particular time period. So that way, the author is, I just came to know about him recently. He is well versed in about around 34 plus languages. He learned himself. And at the age of 10, he left the house. And then he went into reading on his own maths, his minds, chemistry, and everything. And first he was involved with the what do you call, mostly Hindi and Sanskrits and the rituals and everything he was involved. And he felt that the rituals are more towards dogmas. So he moved away from that. He embraced Buddhism. And then he went into Russia. And then he went to Europe. And then he went to Tibet. And then he went to Japan, China, and things like that. And then he says he has written, in fact, a special book about how to do traveling. So from, I believe, whatever he has written, at least he has written in a fictional point of view. And after reading that, my mindset completely changed. After reading all the 20 or 19 short stories, my mind completely changed about India.
What way?
Because
What way it changed your mind?
see, the fundamental thing, like, okay, of course, there are so many things are there, and one highlight I can give, which is the rituals part of it, like the dogmas part of it, right? What he says that around, I observed in his one of 450 AD, they introduced sati. Okay, and in the 19th chapter, around 1829 or something, 1820s, the sati got lifted. So this is from reading, I got this observation. He doesn't say, okay, how it was introduced, why it was introduced. He gives that reason. I wish you guys read that to understand why it was done. And then if you come to on the 19th chapter, you will find that why it was lifted and who fought for it and what all they did and how it was done. This is just one portion. Okay, if you go back to the previous question, like why I'm saying this is important, because how the whole cultural system formed in India, he writes there with all fictional characters. And there, in one case, I noticed they come from Volga, starting from Volga. They come from the Hindu Kush, which is true based on our discussions previously. They come to Hindu Kush and then they come down towards the Ganga side. There, he mentions that they do accept that Indus Valley people, he calls it as Asuras, Indus Valley people are more advanced. What I felt after reading is that right there is a very good author has given us a proof. And then he says also they talk among themselves between two people, I mean two groups, right? These are different groups, I mean the outsiders and there the insiders are there. So I mean he calls them as the native people or something, right? So they communicate, right? They don't know and they don't understand the language what they're doing. And they also talk, he also says that the communication between them, that the new entrants and the existing people is always a conflict. And then some guys come and tell that, okay, these guys are using some kind of seals which we don't understand. And the entrant leader, he says that, hey, we have to give credit for them for building such constructions. So after reading that particular chapter or something, I felt really, this is one of the key points in understanding that it is really a proof. Because this man has knowledge is so thorough, he mastered Sanskrit. And he moved, and also he has gone into Sri Lanka, he has gone to Japan, he has gone to Russia. I feel whatever he writes, of course, the first time I also noticed that in his entire books, first time I realized that from a North Indian point of view, especially a person from UP, so well versed, so knowledgeable, and he has really written a different view it gave to me. That's the reason why I said it's so important to read this book, because it's all linked and it's very complex. And the most important thing I like is his timelines. Starting from, it goes all the way up to 8,000 years. And the rice cultivation also comes there, cotton cultivation comes there. So if you look at the Tony Joseph book, right, he mentioned it, that cotton. That was my first question in the meetings. So, I mean, this is a really interesting book. I mean, it's on the sideline, you can read slowly, gradually, one chapter at a time. And it is available for $1 in Kindle.
Right.
So I asked.
There is a similar book about the European invasion or migration into North America by James Michener. It's called The Centennial. Fascinating book. It talks about a lot of the conflict between the Native American culture and the European culture. And there was also a movie called The Searchers, a brilliant movie. A lot of the things that we see as conflicts between the Aryans and the Indus Valley people or the Dravidians, you'll see echoes of that in the movie Searchers. When a European girl is kidnapped by the Native Americans, much to my surprise, the Europeans pretty much abandon her. They think that she's dead. They even conduct a ceremony washing their hands off of it, even though they know that she was alive. But she has been converted into the Native American religion. She lives with Native Americans, but they relentlessly chase and eventually rescue her. They don't forgive her, but they had to rescue her because it was a blot on their manhood. It's an amazing movie. It's black and white, I think, but a lot of that you'll see that in the story, The Centennial. If you read that, you'll see that typically how migrating cultures, which think they are superior to the primitive people, how they treat them, and how the primitive people encounter these invaders into their land. It's a brilliant way to fictionalize all of that. But it's a very good. I enjoyed reading Volga to Ganga. That was years ago.
David Wright makes an important observation along the lines of what you just said. The haplogroup R people are 1b. They went west into Europe, and the hunter-gatherers of early Europeans don't exist anymore. They dominated. And they went to America. R1b rules America.
Right.
R1b went to Yucatan Peninsula. R1b there rules Mexico. And R1a came into Hindu Kush and into India. R1a people rule India. So R1 people seem to rule wherever they go. On the other hand, R2 people seem to have integrated. They come from the same stock. We have R2 in every group of people in India. R2 is present about something like about 5 to 10%. But R2 is at a higher percent in Bihar. We do not know why that is the case, higher percent in Bihar. And R2 was also in Iran during Indus Valley civilization sites, because one of the model genome that David Wright's group compared with the Iraqi Gargi lady, that person was R1. That, they had 4 genomes. One was R2, one was J2, the third one was an L. I don't remember the fourth one. So that was a mixture of genomes that they compared the Iraqi Gargi lady with. So R2 was present in 8000 BCE in Zagros Mountains. How this all came to be is unclear. There was no R1a at all. There is no R1a in Hindu Kush at the moment. In Kalash people genomes, there's none. But R2 is present in a good proportion. So that's a puzzle that is yet to be solved, that we do not know the answer to.
Can I
They
ask
also probably spoke some early version of Sanskrit.
can I ask a philosophical question or cultural question? I don't know. I think Sridevi talked about the different Buddhism, Jainism, and Rajism evolving. Can we correlate? Can we connect? What you all think? Because Indus Valley civilization, so vast areas from 2600 to 1700 BC, for such a long time, lived in a fairly peaceful life without much conflict, as evidence from the seals and statues that what we get in archaeological evidence. And so in the world, I think, I'm just hypothesizing, this area evolved into spiritual tradition. That is Buddhism, Jainism, are all related to going inward. So in a peaceful, several centuries of peaceful life, they contemplated personal life, what is life at all, and directing their thoughts and philosophies inside. And that's how evolved all kinds of religions here. I don't know how this region compared to Middle East, or Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. I think that's a thought. What do you all think?
No, I just wanted to mention one thing which I left in this chapter is how the Buddhist people are getting converted to Muslims, saying like they are saying he's a Vishnu. That is, they are mentioning Allah as Vishnu. I was very surprised in this chapter. She's even giving wordings for that, where they are saying the little people, they are saying after the Pala dynasty declines, they are saying like Allah's Vishnu of Ara. So it is something I do not know how it is getting into this, but it was really very it was a different thought
I
for me.
just want to extend that thought on what you said there. So recently I read a book by Professor Kailasapati, who was a prominent scholar in Tamil from University of Jaffna. And in that he says that conversion of any other religion, from Buddhism to either Christianity or Muslim, happened because of the hijacking that happened in the Bhakti period, emphasizing the Aryan traditions, and all the little people were left out and felt when Buddhism fell, they had no place to go where they were embraced, and Islam gave them a rescue, and that's how that conversion happened. So they were happy with Buddhism, not being able to reconcile or be in sync with the Aryan tradition. But then when Buddhism fell and Jainism fell, they couldn't get absorbed back into the Aryan or the Bhakti tradition, and hence they branched into Islam, which also gave them similar comfort.
And
So
also
that's
elitism.
another thought.
It's more than
Hinduism
that.
is
In both
elitism, that top the hierarchical caste system. I guess they
Yes.
thought that's not equal. Why don't we move to some other philosophy
Yeah.
which is equal?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
It's more than that. It is not that they went to a random religion. They went to Islam and Christianity because both of them came with swords and guns.
Correct.
The Arab
The power and
protected
the
power.
equality. Yes.
They could stand up to the Hindu kings, and
Yes.
we know for sure that the South Tamil Nadu fishermen converted to Catholicism because the Portuguese gave them the protection to continue to fish
Yep.
and mine pearls, and they couldn't have done that without the power of the Europe. So these are not random,
But
and it's not because of equality; it's because of the guns.
No, sir. Sir, I just moved in between. I did not answer to your question because your question is very elaborate. Like it's more philosophical type.
Yeah.
So I just wanted, since you were mentioning this, I forgot. Like she's also mentioning that and how the Brahmins were imposing taxes on those Buddhist people.
But to go back to your question, Dr. Arasu, I think that's a narrative that's being set. It's not really that peaceful if you really look at it, even within the Cheras and the Cholas and the Pandyas, who were like all Tamil and all were upholding the traditional values, they still fought with each other. And this is another thing that Professor Kailasapati gets into, like the entire Sangam literally is all about blood. Like anybody who shed blood has been glorified. So I mean, the subcontinent has been narrated as a peaceful society. It might have happened later on, but if you go back, it all depends on how far you want to go and which particular context you want to set. So it's not that of a generic thing that we could paint a picture like. That's my opinion anyways.
Has a question?
I have a question for Subhadra. So,
Okay.
Subhadra,
Yes.
yeah, you had talked about language X, right? But talking about the script, like the language, we know the IVC is so big. It is several millions of square kilometers, right? So it's so big. Also, we know that several people had also talked about it. It need not be one language, it could be many languages spoken into that area. But the script, if you see, the scripts has more or less the same symbols and signs. And similarly, even if we take the advanced form of Prakrit, that is also unanimous everywhere in North India, right? So, do you have any insights into why the script tended to be the same, though the languages are different?
As you said, they could have been I'm just speculating after reading this book and from my other readings, Mama. So, Indus Valley civilization, as big as it is, and there were different pockets of people. And probably the language, when they mean the language spoken there, because we know it was a trading community, a mercantile community, So the seals that were developed, they are relating it to the trade that was being practiced there. So I'm thinking when they mean the Indus Valley civilization language, they are meaning to one particular language that was more common and spoken amongst the trade communities. And so that's what they are taking as, at least when she says the language X, maybe that is what she's trying to take into consideration, which is more spoken by the people who are traveling all over, doing their trade amongst the different populations in Indus Valley.
But trade is one attribute, right, for a civilization, but there are many attributes to a civilization.
Trade could have had an impact on the script, going back to your
Script, I
question,
agree
Ma'am.
for the script, but for
Yeah.
the languages per se, it cannot be one language, one trade. Language X, when she quotes as language X, it is not one in my understanding, because trade is one of the activities over there.
No, but trade is one of the activities that gets spread, and that is actually, if you take, a lot of our religions have been propounded and have been taken across because of tradesmen, like Jainism spread all over India because of tradesmen. So similarly, there should have been a language which was taken by one particular group of people going from different areas and making little creoles. They could have made little creoles, wherever they went. But they had a substratum of a language which they would have carried. And that's what probably she's considering it as languages. Because you can't take every language and start talking about it. They should have been one language. And that's my understanding, or that's how I understood and kept it as a base in my mind when I was reading the chapter.
So if we take chapter 1 and 5, right? Chapter 1, she talks about Indo-Aryan languages, which are many languages. And chapter 5 also Munda languages, which are many languages, right? So,
but here in the chapter 4, we are talking about finding out that one language which would have formed a substantial substratum for the birth of all these languages, or at least the commonality of all these languages to that one language. And that one language could have been amongst hundreds that were spoken in that area. And that one language was predominantly spoken by one particular group, which was capable of taking it all around and spreading it and making it a more common language. Like, for instance, in India, we have multitude languages being spoken, but still we can consider that English is a very common language, that we can take it across from all over and still converse bits and pieces here and there. Right.
That is what,
Correct.
that is how she's ending the 5th chapter, sorry. She's saying she's considering English, the same what ma'am said is what she's mentioning. But she's saying though English is all over, it's spilled all over, it is only the little people's language. All the important language, it is being, she's saying again and again, she's emphasizing that the little people are the ones who are carrying the languages. Those who are not urbanized are the people, they are always carrying the language. That is what the entire chapter, when I looked in it, more than language features, she's talking about the social inequalities. Yeah, that is what she's talking, and that is how she's ending this chapter. Though we have English and all those, the one thing that is still very important is the little people's language, is how she's ending the chapter, 5th chapter.
and also she makes this statement as well, I just read it out. In any case, it is really only groups with political power that leave a linguistic mark. This is a different section, but she makes this point as well. The political power has more influence, right?
Yeah. That's true.
Because they get into the literary form, because they get into the written form. So that is how she's saying in this chapter, how these Munda languages are being written so early than other languages. One more point she's making is, these are the only languages that are made into the literature very early.
What yearly? What is the time reference, Sridevi? You are
She's saying the 10th and 12th centuries when the Muslims actually entered. So she's contributing the entire, the Prakrits, the Munda Prakrits were
your network
written,
is
they were written into the literary form. You're able to hear me,
you can close your video.
Burma?
Video, yes.
You can close
Video,
your
if you
video.
close, audio will be clear.
Yeah, here she's making that 10th and the 12th century is where the Prakrits are being written because of the Muslim rulers. They were totally against the elite people, and they are embracing the little people. So that is how the Prakrits are entering into the written, how she's connecting it. How
Network is quite bad.
these are getting.
If you have any other connection, you can join.
Sridhar,
Yeah, I have one question for the author actually. Why she's calling little people?
yeah. Raj, நீங்க சொல்லுங்க.
Oh,
I had that
people
question
without
too,
power.
and that's one
People
of the
without
things
power.
that
That's it.
Huh?
Without
without
power.
Not the ruling class.
Or maybe the lowest, or the people who are in the community who do a physical things and they have to
No,
communicate with them.
just ordinary folks who do not have,
Ordinary
who
folks.
do not wield power. அவ்வளவுதான்.
Yes,
But
yes,
doesn't
without
mean
the power. Yeah, yeah.
without
No.
power.
Why
Noam
not call her
Chomsky,
நம்ம
native?
வந்து look how English has progressed in India. They ruled only for 200 years.
Yeah.
But yet all major things in India are done in English, right? So
that's how
you can
Noam
imagine
Chomsky,
influence of 2000 years.
right. Noam Chomsky says the one fundamental point that if a language takes root, whether administratively or power center or international relationship, gradually it replaces other language and becomes one dominant language, like English is becoming in India.
No, I would prefer she calls it as a native speakers
Yeah.
or something like that.
No, this is the way. See what I mean, Sridharan sir. See, to make it easy to understand or make the things to where it comes from, how the language is getting evolved. That is also one of the reason I feel like the father's tongue and the motherland also could have been formed from that perspective, kind of thing. Like, the real Creole or the real language is getting developed by the local language and the people who are coming in giving. So they are the people who create the Creole. The Creole is the form of the communication, goes with the grammar as a fundamental thing, and the words and vocabulary from the other thing. So I feel like this is okay for me
No, I
to
mean,
call it as
I
a
think
little language.
we also have to accept the fact that she is coming from Trinidad, and that has an influence on her research work. So she has
that's
that
what
lens
I was
of,
thinking.
and her definition of Creole is how she starts the entire conversation based on people from Britishers, ruling class, and all that, and then little people from Africa and all that. So that lens is already there; it's baked into it.
The important
Okay.
distinction I like to make observation is she looks at it as an evolutionary process. And on the other hand, traditional linguists, they don't look at it as an evolutionary process. They try to find cognates and go to the root word. And they live primarily on root. They do get into the grammar, but they don't make the arguments for how it evolved, but rather how one is related to another. That's it. But she makes an additional very important insight into the migration of the movement of people in the discussion of evolution of the language. So that is how her work is different from what linguists work such as Krishnamurti or other traditional people. Southward, for example, another traditional linguist. her work is therefore adds another dimension to linguistic study of evolution of languages. And she adds additional new information that has come to the fore because of genomic analysis, which, for example, Krishnamurti's work completely ignores it because he does not know what that aspect of the problem was.
Okay,
So that's
towards
why her work is very unique because of that. Now, remember, it is still a hypothesis to some extent. So it is for future generations to figure out how much of this is true going forward, right? And you know, in the body of sciences, we always say what we now say is true may not be true next year or the following year, right? Because new information, new data will come to the fore. I usually cite this as an example in my class. Newton's law was considered true all the way till 1908 until Einstein said it is not true. It's only an approximation. And then we now have a modified rule of not F equal to MA. It's F equal to MA divided by square root of 1 minus ratio of velocity squared, right? So mass was constant until 1908. After 1908, mass was not a constant, right? So similarly, these type of findings also go through modifications with time.
I have one
it's
question
11,
to the
11
group.
o'clock in
Lot
India.
of, yeah,
It's 11
shall
o'clock
we
in India.
yeah,
I know.
shall we
One
bring
last
it?
question to the group.
Yeah.
Madras Bhasha, Pidgin, Creole.
Huh?
Madras Bhasha,
Creole.
Pidgin, Creole.
Creole.
Creole தான் சொல்லணும்.
Clegg.
Okay.
கிளேக்குன்னு
That's all I
சொல்லுவான்.
have.
அது இல்ல
அது- அது
Creole
ஆங்கிலத்துல
Google
இருந்து
who's
எடுத்திருக்காங்க நிறைய
the father,
வார்த்தைகள்.
who's the
மாத்ததானே
mother is the
சொல்றீங்க.
question. Who's the father, who's the mother? That's the biggest question.
We don't have an answer.
Okay, I think we have
Thank you.
passed.
Thank you.
We have many questions, but we can continue in the WhatsApp group.
In the WhatsApp group.
Yeah. Mani,
Tha-
Okay. Thanks for very, very fascinating presentation and very interesting discussion that followed it. Thanks to Subhatra for starting off from last week, and Sridevi. Both of you did a very good job of summarizing a fairly complex topic. And we have to thank Ranjit and Roja Mataya Research Library for their technical assistance week after week for the live streaming and recording. Thanks to all the participants who, 2 hours. It's a complicated topic. We were worried about linguistics, and we are still here. We are passionately discussing it. That seems that this group is ready for handling even more complicated topic like Einstein, perhaps. And next week's topic is chapter 6 of the book, The Dravidian Direction, Dreamtime. Okay, the speaker is our Dr. Bama Muttulingam. We'll see you all then. Until then, have a great week.
Okay. Sri, உங்க PowerPoint slide post பண்ணிடுறீங்களா JOV group-க்கு?
Sure, sir. I'll make some modifications.
Yeah.
And I'll post it.
Thanks, Ma.
Subhadra,
Very nice job.
Good job.
Complicated.
Bye.
Very complex topic.
பார்க்கலாமா?
Yes, sir. Thank you.